Welcome to the Play-by-Play with Patrick and Brandon, your home for updates and insights into the sports world.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to episode 16 of the Play-by-Play. I just got back from Wisconsin earlier this week, had a fun little time, went to see a Brewers game, got to see some old friends. It was pretty fun. How have you been doing, Brandon?
I've been doing good, just grinding, uh, watching the UFC, the stuff.
Regular Brandon things,
Yeah, not running though, not running though.
not running. Well, I
Uh,
mean, is running a regular Brandon thing anymore? You're kind of washed. Like, not to be that
God,
guy, but I mean,
yeah, no, the washed allegations are here, and unlike this time last year when I was beating off the washed allegations, every single time I went out for a workout, the washed allegations are here to stay. Um, I've been hearing it, and I went for a 7 mile run a couple days ago, and the next day I couldn't walk because my hip hurt. So that's what I get for trying to go out there and run like I was a sophomore in college. Too old for that.
well, unlike Brandon, the sports world hasn't stopped running. We have a pretty good amount of stuff to talk about today. So I think the only place to start is gonna be the MLB. It's really the only Big Four sport league that's still chugging right now. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, it's kind of been the major storyline we've been talking about the last couple weeks, or one of the two, I would say, is the American League East. Probably the most competitive division in baseball right now. And a couple of teams have kind of hit a bump in the road. The Red Sox have lost three straight, two being in the Athletics, and the most recent to the Blue Jays. I believe they're playing right now as we speak. I haven't had an opportunity to check this score. Um,
I'm gonna do that right now because I'm nervous. We're up 1-0. Red Sox are up 1-0, bottom of the third. So a lot of baseball left to be played, but come on, boys.
Good
You got me
start.
nervous. You got me sweating over here.
So my question for you, Brandon, is how much stock do you put in like a three-game sputter? Because for a long time, the Red Sox this season were very questionable. We didn't like the baseball they were playing. They were not good. Nobody was watching Red Sox baseball. And then all of a sudden they caught fire. Do you think that this like ridiculous streak that they were on was a flash in the pan, or do you think that's the norm and they're just in a little down spot right now?
I think it's natural. I mean, law of averages that you're probably not going to win 26 out of 29 games for the rest of the season. That is a pretty hard level of baseball to sustain. Uh, I would say that I hope that this is not the new normal for them and that it is just a skid. Maybe they got a little worn down. It is tough to maintain that level of play. Three straight is rough. The Athletics, obviously not the best team in the league. Honestly, neither are the Blue Jays. They're also sitting at the bottom of their division in the AL East. I hope not. I hope not. But with the Red Sox, a three-game skid gets me a little scared. Obviously, you can point to the history of September collapses that this franchise unfortunately has, and it makes you sweat a little. I'm not saying full-blown panic mode because, to be quite honest, three-game skid in baseball does not mean that. But I would say there are like two beads of sweat rolling down my forehead, and I'm just like remembering all of the years when we inexplicably finished like 81 and 81. I can't see that again. So hoping the boys pick it up a little bit.
Yeah, on the bright side, the Red Sox did just activate Adley Rutschman, who we picked up last week in the trade. So hopefully he comes in, lights some fires on that defense. He's an incredible catcher. So I'll be excited to see what goes on there as we move forward with him. But that's not the only real, bump in the road the AL East has faced as of late. Aside from the Boston Red Sox, the Yankees are 5-5 in their last 10. They still can't figure it out. And I think the funny part about this is they also tried to make a big splash at the trade deadline. Luis Garcia Jr. is playing and he's playing well. He hit a go-ahead homer in the seventh against the Cardinals in his debut on August 3rd, which was literally the day after he got traded. So he came in and just decided to hit a bomb, try and help the team win. But the funny part is, even with his incredible contributions, because he's been playing very well since then, the Yankees still aren't doing anything. It wasn't enough. They're still slipping. They've been slipping for a while. And, it makes me kind of happy to see that, even with their big move, their big ace in the hole, it might not be enough. It's a great look for the Red Sox, who've been on their tails for like as long as I can remember this season. What do you think about the Yankees, Brandon? Aside from the fact that you hate them, I don't need to hear more of that.
Aside from the obvious, the Yankees, I think, in an ideal world for Yankees fans, would have taken advantage of the Red Sox's recent skid to put a little gap, put a little bit of buffer room between them and the Sox. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, they weren't able to do it. Not one to give them too many excuses, but obviously the Yankees are still dealing with a slew of injuries to key players. Cody Bellinger, Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge are all still out. I think Stanton and Bellinger on the like 10-day IR, and then Judge has been on the 60-day IR for or IL for a while. So it's tough for them to like sort of climb out of it and play good baseball when they're missing so many key players. But the injury gods show no mercy. They really don't. Your team will get banged up. It's the dog days in August. You're gonna have to deal with stuff like this. And at the end of the day, um, injuries happen. They suck, but they happen. And if you're a Yankees fan, you can't just keep saying, "Oh, we'll be better when these guys are back. We'll be better when these guys are back." You got to hope that the people they have there can figure it out because the Red Sox might be on a 3-game skid now, but if they can sort of, pick up out of the tailspin and get back on the trend they were going, the Yankees could find themselves in third place in that division, which I'm sure to all of the obnoxious, arrogant Yankees fans, they would be very upset about that.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it right on the head. I do think, the sign of a good ball club is depth. Obviously, it sucks not having Aaron Judge, who's been one of the best players in the MLB for a very long time now. Let's not talk about his playoff performances, but he's been an incredible player in the MLB. Cody Bellinger, obviously, also great. But if you don't have depth, you're not going to win in the regular season. That's just the fact of the matter. I mean, you have so many games to play. There's so many games still left to play. You're playing almost every single day. And I feel like, the Yankees would be or should be less worried if they were a team that was confidently in the playoffs. But the American League wildcard race is still so tight right now that, a bad week or two and they might find themselves on the outside looking in. So it's not the time to really take your foot off the gas. You can't just sit there and say, oh, as long as we make it to the playoffs, we'll be fine. You got to make it to the playoffs. That's very important. But aside from the Yankees and the Red Sox, our team of the week this week is going to be the Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays have won 7 straight, rolling from before the deadline to now. Their big splash, excuse me, at the deadline was Freddie Peralta. He really hasn't made a huge difference at all. He's pitched in 2 games, and his ERA sits at like a 9, which
Ew.
he's had a bad year all year, and part of me did attribute that to the fact that he was playing for the Mets. Um, he was playing in the land of doom and despair, the absence of hopes and dreams. So I was thinking maybe he'd get better. Freddie had a career year last year. He was playing incredible. I believe he was an all-star last year, but he really hasn't done anything for the Rays. Obviously, change of scenery. There's still time for him to turn it around, but it hasn't mattered for them. They've still been rolling. Their team was good before the deadline. So I really don't know. I don't know if they're going to be caught in the American League as it stands, especially when they're catching fire again with only a couple months left of baseball to be played. Obviously, in a sport like baseball, a couple months is still a lot. You're looking at a plethora of games, but I really don't know if anyone could catch them. What do you think, Brandon? Do you think they've kind of got that top spot locked up? And if they do, what do you think, the promise of their playoff performance is looking like? How do you think they're going to stack up in a postseason?
Well, in terms of the regular season, it is going to be very hard for any team in the AL East to catch them in the divisional race. And then you look wider, across the American League, you've got two division leading teams that have 61 wins. At this point in the season, both the AL Central leading White Sox and the AL West leading Astros. I mean, you want to talk about dumpster fires of divisions. I mean, my goodness. Neither of those teams would even be third place in the AL East. So in terms of the first place in the American League, I don't think any team is going to catch them. I mean, considering that they're also, like you said, they're getting hot at the right time. 7 game win streak, 6 games ahead of the Yankees, 8 on the Red Sox. It's going to be really hard for either of those teams to catch them. The Red Sox, just because they've already made up so much ground, and it is hard to sustain. Like at one point in the season, they were 26-3 in their last 29. As much as I love that run, and I think it is more indicative of the quality of the Sox, you're probably not going to sustain that. You're going to lose some. You're going to get worn out. You're going to get tired. You're going to drop, a back to back, stuff like that. And then the Yankees, like you said, like we've been talking about, are really injured, beat up and, really inconsistent. They haven't been able to find their rhythm. I don't want to call it too early, but I would say that the Rays are the favorite to walk away with the first playoff spot. And in terms of the playoffs, it's hard not to pick them as the favorite just because they have been one of the only American League teams to be consistently good for the whole year. Obviously, the Yankees injured. Red Sox were pretty terrible in the first half of the season. And then I wouldn't call the White Sox or the Astros like really good quality teams. They're all right. They're not close to the Rays. So
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, the Rays do really just have so much talent. Junior Camaro's been incredible this year. Yandy Diaz has been incredible. Jonathan Aranda, Chandler Simpson, and so many more players on the Rays have been incredible. There are still 44 games left in the season, so there is still a lot of baseball. I don't think it would be impossible, but you'd have to see some astronomical drop off from the Rays, and they haven't been a team that, caught fire like the Red Sox. They've just been very consistent getting it done all year. They've been a very good-looking ball club since the start of the season. I think my last question revolving around the American League for you, Brandon, is and it hits a little closer to home. Boston fans are fickle, right? And I think especially Boston Red Sox fans, just because of the nature of baseball. With, even this drop off right now, I guarantee you Massachusetts sports radio is all doom and despair this week. They're acting
oh
like
goodness.
somebody just got shot. So do you think the fans stay behind the Red Sox after, a 3 game dip, especially if it continues? And if they don't, how much do you think that affects the level of play of the Red Sox? Because obviously, fan environment is huge.
I would say the fans are less likely to, drop their support than the, talking heads on sports radio. I mean, if you live anywhere around the New England area, you know what it's like to be like driving to work or driving somewhere at like 8:30 on a Tuesday and you flip to, whatever radio station and some dude is just like crying about how the Red Sox are terrible and the locker room is a mess, the management's terrible. You know, it really is all doom and gloom and sadness. And after a 3 game losing streak, I haven't tuned in a while. I can assume that it's sort of like fire is raining from the sky, end of days type situation. Um, I don't think the fans are going to just dip out on the Sox, especially after the run of form they've had. I think if anything, the fans will be like, "Come on, guys, we know you can play better. We know you have it in you. Just like find it within yourselves, get back to the winning ways. Keep the momentum going." Ultimately, I think a good team is not measured in how they play when they're on a ginormous winning streak, but it's how they rebound. It's how you deal with adversity. And, you're coming down off the high of feeling pretty invincible as far as baseball teams go with the run of form they've had. It's going to be interesting to see if they can rebound. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle perhaps a little bit more criticism from the radio, from the fans. Like you said, Boston fans are they're not shy about voicing their displeasures with the team. If they see anything they don't like, they will make it known, whether it's in Fenway, around Boston, on social media. So I don't think the fans are going to dip out. I think they're going to, stick with the team. That doesn't mean that they won't that they won't get mad though. They are going to complain if 3 games losing turns into 4, turns into 5. They I mean, me, Red Sox fans. We like to talk. We like to talk. Please, guys, just please do it because I don't want to have to deal with a big losing streak. I want to win the World Series. Is that too much to ask? Is that too much to ask?
Buried in there somewhere, you got mad philosophical. There was a great little life lesson, some wisdom
You know
from
me.
Brandon LeBlanc there. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think for the most part, the fans will stay in it, especially with the playoffs coming up. I hope the fans stay in it. That is like one of my least favorite parts of Boston sports is when people give up way too early. It happens way too often. And I don't know if that's a league-wide thing or like a nationwide thing, excuse me. Obviously, I can only speak to the communities I've been a part of my whole life, but coming from experience, you'll see it with the Red Sox, you'll see it with the Celtics a lot. People love to give up.
The
I think
season is over.
I think it is sports radio, especially. I don't think they help. Which, from the perspective of sports radio, when you're in like a very localized community, taking like an opposing position, speaking out against the team will get people angry. And people are honestly more likely to tune in angry or upset than they are happy. Like if you're saying stuff they all just agree with, for the most part, it's like, all right, whatever. I already have this opinion in my head. But if you got, I don't know, like Felger and Maz out there saying, oh, Red Sox lost 3 games. The season's over. Give it all up. Those Red Sox diehards, those Boston diehards are gonna get really mad. And because they're mad, they're gonna stay and listen because they're gonna want to hear what's next. But I do think it is unhealthy for the community at large. I think it's not good for fans of the team, which then means it's not good for the team. So we'll see. That was definitely a very big deviation from us. Little comment on on the state of sports fandom, but coming off that, Tarek Skubal has played his first couple games for the Dodgers. He played against the Cubs, which they lost, and then he played in a win against the Royals. He's sitting at like a 4.0 ERA in those 2 games, which is not very good. He attributed a lot of it to nerves. He's played his whole career with the Tigers so far. So again, I think it's way too early, much like with Freddie Peralta. It's way too early on a new team to really kind of you know, zone in on them and be like, okay, what's going on? I think you see it in every sport. Just like takes time to adjust to a new city, to a new team. Their chemistry is definitely not there. They're probably not feeling themselves quite yet. Um, but that's really all I have on the Dodgers, other than, a couple more interpersonal stories. The Cubs loss is very important. In the National League, the MVP races really boiled down to Shohei Ohtani and Pete Crow Armstrong. And in this game against the Dodgers, Pete Crow Armstrong hit 2 homers. Insane. Kind of good, walk up to this super team, these Giants, and say, you know what? I still got this. I really love to see it. You know how I feel about the Dodgers. I think you know how America feels about the Dodgers at this point. And aside from that, the Dodgers are 2-8 in their last 10. They're slipping. I will say, I don't know if you disagree, because I think 2-8 is a little worse than like a 3-game loss streak. The three Dodgers fans do not need to worry. The Dodgers are a team that will make the playoffs. And once they make the playoffs, they have so much talent, it's going to be all systems go.
It is really hard to beat a team like the Dodgers in a series. Like getting one game off of them in like the middle of August is one thing. Getting 3 games out of five or 4 out of 7 on them is a totally different story. Um, for any Dodgers fans that are whining and complaining about a 2-8, run in
I'm
their
sorry,
last
did
10.
did you say Dodgers fans?
Oh,
I
it's
think it's
implying that there's plural. That's a bit much. To the
yeah,
Dodgers fan,
fan.
their singular fan, I will say this. Let me play you a sad song on the world's tiniest violin. I do not care. Your guy, I assume that the Dodgers payroll is probably more than the GDP of several small countries. It's utterly ridiculous, and I don't feel bad. I feel no pity. I feel absolutely none. Zilch, zip, nada. Um, that being said, they're gonna make the playoffs. A team like the Dodgers is gonna find a way to get in. And when they do, it's kind of like, all right, that was real sweet when you got a game off of us back in July, huh? Now beat us 3 times in a row. Oh wait, you can't because we have our payroll is like 10 times as much as yours. Oh yeah, and that it's so ridiculous. It's like every big free agent you can think of. Yeah, we signed him. Yeah, we paid him like more money than like the Athletics' entire roster. What are you gonna do about it? Not lock out probably next year, but
The
that's
biggest trade at
beside
the deadline, also the
that's besides the
Dodgers.
point.
They're just kind of taking
Ah,
over everywhere. The one good thing about this Dodgers slip, well, I mean, there are a lot of good things unless you're the Dodgers fan. Um, it leaves a lot of room for the Brewers to really take over the National League. They're building up a lot of breathing room, even during a period where they haven't been playing their best baseball. I believe they're 6-4 in their last 10. Um, they currently, I believe, are 3 games ahead of the Dodgers, which is pretty good. The Dodgers are also tied with the Braves right now, who I believe currently have the tiebreaker. And I think if you're the Brewers or if you're the Braves, trying to hang on to that number one seed is super important because you don't want to run into the Brewers. Excuse me, you don't want to run into the Dodgers before those the league championship. You want to play them for the league championship and then hopefully try and move on into the World Series. If you're the Brewers, you want the Braves to wear down the Dodgers, and if you're the Braves, you want the Brewers to wear down the Dodgers. So that 2-3 swing is going to be very important. The Cubs could ruin a lot of things here. They are the fourth best team in the National League right now. They would have to pass the Brewers, which is realistically not going to happen. They're 5.5 games behind. So it's still possible, again, with a lot of baseball left to be played, but they're really the main wrench that could be thrown into any team's postseason plans here. We'll definitely have to talk about the Cubs a lot more in the coming weeks, and we'll definitely have to talk about the Braves a lot more because that race is getting pretty interesting. But the only other thing I wanted to talk about, just because, I was there for it in person, Jackson Chorio hit 4 home runs since the start of last Brewers homestand, so their series against the Pirates. I got to see one. I believe it was a leadoff homer against the Pirates at the game I went to. We were just walking in as he hit it. The stadium exploded. That was pretty fun. So he has been on a heater. The Brewers are going to need that. The Brewers are going to need more from their team, again, to stay ahead of the Dodgers, stay ahead of the Braves, stay ahead of the Cubs. They got a lot of dogs at their heels. Christian Yelich also hit his first homer in a little bit recently. Very impressive. He's been having a down year, but seeing the old guy, seeing the savvy vet getting back out there, getting it done. A flash of prime Christian Yelich would be exactly what they need to make a World Series push look realistic. So again, we'll talk about the Cubs, we'll talk about the Braves, but I guess my question to you before we close out this little segment, Brandon, is if one of those teams can do it, who do you think it is? And now, obviously, we're talking about who can beat the Dodgers. It's the story of the year.
so when I think about teams that are going to take down Goliath, who's going to be the David to the Goliath? Who's going to be the Rocky to the Drago? I think of a lot of different qualities, but two that I think stand out are the power of friendship and the power of the unction. Number one, power of friendship. We know the Brewers have it. We know they do. That's how they win games with the roster they have. On paper, are they as talented as the Dodgers? No, but they'll find a way. And number two, like you said, Christian Yelich is a bit of an unk now. He's a bit on the older side. He's been having a rough year. I would love to see the unk hold it down. I would love to see a crafty vet come alive late season and just give the Brewers another dimension on offense with the bat. I would love to see it. He's an absolute beast when he's at his best. Obviously, it's been a bit of a down year for him compared to his ridiculously high standards. I want it to be the Brewers. I kind of do. In terms of the National League, I want it to be the Brewers. I would love to see those guys pull through and take down the evil empire. Just put the X-wing right on the Death Star and blow it to Kingdom Come. That's what we need. That's what the world needs. Go Brewers! Dang, I'm inspired. I'm fired up.
Yeah, I agree. You're never gonna see me say anything otherwise. I think the Brewers could definitely get it done. Because I think one thing to look at is like the chips on these teams' shoulders because you're going to be the underdog going into a series like this. And the Brewers have a lot going on for them. You have Jackson Chorio, you have Wild Bill, William Contreras, you have Yelich, who all have failed to get it done in years past. Chorio, much more of an up and comer. William Contreras. I almost talked about Wilson, the other Contreras. William Contreras has been their best player for a long time, one of the best catchers in baseball, and they've struggled to get it done with him. And Yelich has been a shadow of his MVP season for quite a while. He's been plagued by injuries. He's been down, and again, they haven't been able to get it done against the Dodgers. So all of those guys are probably looking like, this is it. This is our chance. They're probably the deepest they've looked as a team in a very long time. I could talk about the Miz again. I love talking about the Miz. It's a possibility. A lot would have to go right, but I don't think the Brewers are the only team that have a chance. I think the Braves could also do it, but I think the team I want to put a little bit more stock in is the Cubs. And now Brewers fans and Cubs fans are probably both looking at me like, what is this guy saying? Because they hate each other. But I think the Cubs have been pretty exceptional this year, obviously in the shadow of the Brewers and then in the shadow of Dodgers, like the rest of the baseball world. But they've been a very strong team. And like I mentioned earlier, Pete Crow Armstrong is playing the best baseball of his career, maybe the best baseball of anybody in the league right now. And he's probably mad because nobody's talking about the Cubs. It's not happening. So if I'm him, he probably has the biggest chip on his shoulder in the entire league. And that's something that could come into play. Baseball's not really a sport where you can win a series by yourself. They do have a decently strong roster that we will touch on more going towards the playoffs. But I'm looking at Pete Crow Armstrong, and I'm seeing something right now. I think he could give him a little run. Obviously, he's going to need a lot of help, and even then, a lot's going to have to go right. But that's really all I got.
I think it's time to talk about probably one of the biggest sporting events, not just in the Western Hemisphere, but in the entire world. If you are a diehard football fan, like myself, the summer months, the winter, the spring, once you get past the Super Bowl, it's a rough time. There's literally no football. It kills me that I get to Sunday and I'm like, all right, bet let's watch some football, and then there's just nothing. There's nothing, and it makes me sad. Well, that all changed. Football is back, and last week, Thursday night prime time, we got to see probably one of the greatest matchups, not in terms of talent, but in terms of future trivia names. That's right, the NFL Hall of Fame game took place last week, officially kicking off the NFL preseason. And if you're a guy like me who loves future trivia questions, some guys that might not make a roster but will definitely make it into your heart, seeing the Cardinals and the Panthers throw down in the Hall of Fame game was a sight. And I gotta say, I talked a lot of smack about Carson Beck leading up to that game. Looking at the training camp footage, I was like, you know what? This guy might be out of the league before the season starts. Welcome to the CFL, Carson Beck. And then you know what happened? I watched the game. Carson Beck, 180 yards, a touchdown. He looked smooth. He looked comfortable on an NFL field. Is it the Hall of Fame game? Yes. Do I put a lot of stock in it? No. That being said, the Panthers had a little gem of their own by the name of Haynes King, who threw for 180 yards and two touchdowns and had a rushing touchdown where he lowered the shoulder and got into the end zone from like I think 7 or 8 yards outside the goal line. I'm not gonna lie, it was super fun to watch. It was so fun to watch. I missed football so bad. Seeing Haynes King versus Carson Beck, it was like I was like 11 years old and it was 2013 again. And I was watching Tom Brady and Peyton Manning going life or death in Gillette Stadium. Only it was the Hall of Fame game and it was Carson Beck in a Cardinals uniform. Like, it was just beautiful. Shout out all my boys who love the Hall of Fame game and all the boys that talked a lot of crap about Carson Beck and then had to eat their words as he stunted all over the Panthers fourth stringers. Like, come on.
Definitely a fun experience. I mean, there's just something so special about the preseason because you just don't know what's going to happen. Like, it's hard to talk about these games. It's hard to make predictions because, you know, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't even know who's playing. Like, a team could march out New York Knicks legends Darren Watkins Jr. and Aubrey Graham, and I'd be like, you know what? That makes sense. Like, it would not shock me one bit. Like, I honestly really have no predictions or expectations going into any preseason. It's just fun to watch football again, even if it's not, you know, all of these NFL superstars that you're expecting to see play. It's still a whole lot of fun to see these guys that probably won't see the light of day, like you said. So a lot of these guys are playing their hearts out for games that really don't matter, and that makes it a lot of fun.
And like you said, Pat, this is not about the preseason is not perfect for evaluating talent, but what it is perfect for is riding hype trains and creating unforgettable memories. And to take a sort of a throwback to Patriots preseasons of old, I'm going to talk real quick about two of my favorite Patriots preseason legends. Actually, you know what? We're going to change that to three. I want to give a shout out to Demarius Thomas, who was a Patriot in the preseason for a couple games. I believe he caught a touchdown. I think it was 2019 in the preseason. Demarius Thomas, obviously, fantastic player for the Broncos. Gone too soon. Just a football legend who seeing in a Patriots uniform was kind of cool.
Class act.
Um, but for Patriots hype trains, first up, I'm going to talk about my boy Danny Quick Legs Etling. For those of you who do not know who Danny Etling is, he was a like triple backup quarterback for the Patriots. I want to say in like 2018 or 2019, like late Tom Brady era, and he never made the roster. I don't even know if he made a practice squad, but in a preseason game, like I want to say maybe 7 years ago, he ran for an 85-yard touchdown as a quarterback. And when I was watching it, my brain was like, oh my God, we've got Michael Vick. We've got Michael Vick, but his name is Danny Etling, and he wears number 5, and he's on the Patriots. Just crazy. I'm sure all the New England diehards remember Danny Etling. And number two, Malik Cunningham, a little bit lesser known, but Malik Cunningham came out of Louisville, obviously same college as Lamar Jackson, ran a very similar style of offense. A lot of running, a lot of QB options. He looked kind of nice in that preseason. I was like, Malik Cunningham, like, dude, he's like kind of nice. Like he could make a roster. Like I wouldn't hate it if he was on the team. And I don't know what. I think he eventually got traded to the Ravens. I'm not 100% sure, but if you're watching the preseason, you're not going to be able to evaluate talent. NFL coaches struggle with evaluating talent from the preseason. But what you are going to do, no matter what team you're a fan of, is you're going to find like one or two random players and they're gonna make like one of them's gonna dive on a fumble or make a nice tip play as a cornerback. They're gonna do something that just inspires you. And then like 10 years from now, you're gonna be, sitting at work or at home, grilling up some burgers, drinking a beer, and you're gonna say, you know what? Danny Etling was kind of nice with it. That touchdown was sick. That's what preseason's for, in my opinion. And God help me, I love it, and I will be watching as much of it as I can.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Again, football's back. I know a lot of football diehards going to a little bit of a depression episode after the Super
Me,
Bowl.
this guy.
So a lot of people are ecstatic, especially when we got college football, coming back so soon as well. We're definitely gonna have to talk about that a little bit in the coming weeks. But aside from the fact that the preseason's starting, I think this is the perfect time to make fools of ourselves, Brandon. I
Oh
think it's
yeah, I'm
time
ready.
for our way too early NFL award predictions. Nothing to go on, no season yet. We haven't seen these teams play together. But you know what? That makes it the exact perfect time to get predictions wrong so people can look back at this next year and make fun of us for how bad these were.
I would like to first clarify that even if every single one of my picks are wrong, I still have elite ball knowledge, and I will hear no slander on my name. That being said, start with the big one, Pat. Who's your MVP?
So there are a lot of ways you could go with the MVP. You have your usuals, Josh Allen for some reason. You could look at Lamar
Mid,
Jackson. A lot of
also
Patriots
mid.
fans are looking and saying Drake May's got it this year. You could look at Stafford again, but I think I'm taking a shot already. I think their team has made a lot of changes, and I think when he's healthy, he's one of the most talented quarterbacks in football. We haven't had the opportunity to see it in a while, but I'd love to see it again. I'm going with Joe Burrow.
Oh boy, Joe Shiesty, Joe Burr, Joe Cool. It's not
It,
impossible, but
it's been a
injury
tough couple years
concerns.
for him. It's been a tough couple years for him. But I remember that playoff run where they made it to the Super Bowl. He was fighting for his life, making some of the greatest throws I've ever seen. I won't forget. I won't forget. In interviews, he's been talking, saying this is the best his body's felt in a long time. He's been a full participant in training camp. Obviously, their team looks a lot better than it has in years past. I'm expecting a lot out of Joe Burrow. Is it a crazy ask to go from, injury ridden, having a very down couple of years to league MVP? Yeah, might be crazy. But if there's one thing that the NFL loves, if there's one thing that any sports league loves, it's storylines. You get this guy going crazy. You get the Bengals going crazy again, and I think it could be a good shot.
I like what you said. I agree with a lot of it. I just think there's a player that is going to win the MVP more than Joe Burrow. And it's Drake May. It's always Drake May. I can't pick against him. And as many people will probably say, but Brandon, you're a Patriots fan. You're just being a homer. That's where you're wrong. That's where you're very, very wrong. I'll give you some reasons why Drake May should be one of your MVP candidates. Number one, did you watch him play football last year? He was absolutely phenomenal. Led the league in completion percentage, 31 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions, 4,300 yards. Mind you, in his first full season as a quarterback. We're not going to count the Gerard Mayo year. I have tried to scrub that from my memory, and I'd like to ask that everyone else that listens to this also does the same. Reason number two, he is going into his second year with this coaching staff. He's got an absolutely great head coach in Mike Vrabel. He's got an offensive wizard in Josh McDaniels. He's got a reloaded wide receiving core. Romeo Dubes and AJ Brown have both looked exceptional in training camp. Mind you, that is in addition to a wide receiver core that already had Kayshon Boutte, Pop Douglas, and Mac Hollins, and Kyle Williams, and Efton Chisholm. For all my Efton Chisholm lovers, we up. Watch preseason this week. Efton Chisholm is the boy. You're going to see it. But besides Efton Chisholm, you've got him going into a second year, confident with the coaching staff. You've got a team that is reloaded on both sides of the ball. So a lot of times the MVP conversation, your team has to be at least kind of good. The Patriots are going to be good this year. When you look at all the weapons he has at his disposal on offense, he's got a reloaded and energized offensive line. He's got two pretty solid running backs in Trevion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson, a top-notch wide receiver core, and he's got Hunter Henry as a sort of safety net at tight end. You put all of that together, and what I see is Drake May MVP. Every time I close my eyes, I just imagine it happening, and it makes me smile. So that's going to be my pick, Drake May, MVP.
And reason number three, or reason number four, I'm not really sure. I lost the plot a little bit there. You love Drake May. It's
You're
okay.
dang right I do.
You
You're
can
dang
say
right
it.
I do.
Pull the t-shirt out. Make everyone aware. Scream it from the mountaintops.
You're going to
Brandon
see a lot of
LeBlanc
that in the fall.
loves Drake May. And you know what?
That's a fact.
I love Drake May too. You watching this? You
See,
should love Drake May.
that's
A lot of
facts.
lot of Patriots fans out there hate Drake May because he's a Patriot. But let me tell you what, you, you, and you should all love Drake May.
Couldn't have said it better myself. As much as it pains me, I do have to move on to the other side of the ball. Defensive player of the year. I feel like there's one name on everyone's mind. So,
Yeah.
Pat, just come out and say it.
Let's not be crazy here. I mean, especially with way too early awards predictions, it's fun to take a shot every once in a while. It's fun to look and make a guess. But let's not kid ourselves. Let's not kid anybody. It's Myles Garrett. Is it going to be anyone but Myles Garrett? Is there anyone I think it could be outside of Myles Garrett? No. That could make me look really stupid if somebody else wins it. But Myles Garrett on the Rams, He's on the best defense in the league. That's what it's going to be, plain and simple. They made so many incredible pickups, and he's probably still the best defensive player in the league. So you put the single best player on the single best defense, and what's that formula? That formula is defensive player of the year. There's no other way to put it.
I would have to agree with you there. I don't even want to think about what would happen if they somehow managed to convince Aaron Donald to get off the couch and retire. But even if Aaron Donald does decide to keep watching from the comfort of his own home, you're right. Miles Garrett is he should be your odds-on favorite to win it. And there are other names out there that they're elite defensive players. You could, if I said, "Oh, he wins," it's like, oh, well, that's not unrealistic. It's Miles Garrett. I mean, you've got some really good corners in the league. Obviously, Christian Gonzalez, Pat Surtain, elite cornerbacks who, if they have a crazy year, it's like, oh, they could win it. But I think if you're looking at preseason favorite, uh, it's got to be Miles Garrett. It really does. This is going to be the first time in his career that he is playing on like an elite team. He has been stuck in Cleveland for a long time. He's going to be fired up, and I think he's going to be ready to play the best football of his career, knowing that he could actually contribute to a winning team in the playoffs. That's going to be a huge motivating factor. And if you're a quarterback and you see the Rams on your schedule, you better warm up because you're going to be running around a lot back there.
Yeah, I think I could throw a shout to Max Crosby too. I think I like the improvement that team has made. I think Max Crosby has been good for quite a while, but again, it's really probably just going to be Myles Garrett. I fear for the health and safety of offensive players across the league. Aaron Donald, we're good, bro. You're all right. It's okay. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to play anymore. Yeah, that's really all I have on that one. What do you want to do next,
one more
Brandon?
thing one more thing to add on the whole DPOY thing. While the entire league should be scared in some capacity that Myles Garrett is on the Rams, there is one team that should be more scared, and I'm a little scared for, and that would be the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know if you've been keeping up with the 49ers, but they are a team that, for what it feels like the past 5, 10 years, have been riddled with injuries. Do we know why this is happening? No. Is there an electrical substation that emits radiation that is known to weaken tendons and ligaments and muscles right next to their practice facility? Yes, that is a thing. I'm scared for the 49ers. What are they supposed to do when their legs are already weakened and near injury? When Myles Garrett comes off the edge nearly unblocked and just kills Brock Purdy or Christian McCaffrey. Like, I'm gonna feel bad watching that, and if he does that to the 49ers and they have to trot Mac Jones out there just to get like absolutely destroyed.
Mac attack, baby.
Mac better run, man. You got to run.
You
You
know,
got to start running right now.
it's not all
Get in
bleak.
shape.
Part of their plan, the long secret plan, which of course, as the leading 49ers insider, there's nobody else, it's just me. Christian McCaffrey, at some point or another, that electrical substation will turn him into the Hulk. Enough radiation, and it's eventually going to go. And Christian McCaffrey, who's already jacked, will become the Hulk, and he's going to be unstoppable.
That is how it works. That is how it works.
Hmm.
If anyone is interested in doing more research on this, I believe there were a couple of documentaries and research films you can watch
Yep.
called The Incredible Hulk, The Avengers. Um, if you want to check out those research films, I can go to Disney Plus. Just look up the Hulk. To people that say, "Oh, it's a CGI," no, it's not. It's a
Nope.
documentary film. It was captured. It actually happened. The Hulk actually went on a rampage in New York. That was real. I was there. It was terrible.
And that's going to be
Anyway,
Christian McCaffrey next.
on to the next offensive rookie of the year. Got an interesting class of rookies this year. Patrick, who's your pick?
Um, I think I'm going to keep this one simple too. Truth be told, my knowledge on this rookie class is relatively limited, but again, if there's anything that these award races love, they love a narrative and they love quarterbacks. So I'm looking at first
Hmm.
overall pick, Fernando Mendoza, and I'm seeing, what I would consider a vastly improved Raiders team. Now, obviously, they're still the Raiders. If there's anybody else that's joining the Mets in the land of doom and despair, the land of no hopes and dreams. Um, it's probably the Raiders. The Browns will be another very good shout, but the Raiders have had a lot of problems historically. So if you see the Raiders turn it around and actually look like a solid football team this year, and for Fernando Mendoza is a strong part of that, I think he'll make a great case. Even if they're just okay, I don't think the Raiders need to be incredible for him to get good looks because they're the Raiders.
I think that's a solid projection. The one thing that could throw a wrench into that plan is Kirko Chains. If anyone's been keeping up with the Raiders, which I don't know why you would, the Raiders not only drafted Mendoza, they also signed Kirk Cousins to be sort of a veteran mentor presence in the locker room. I'm not sure what their starting quarterback situation is, who they're planning to go with. I have to imagine they are not going to rush Mendoza out there if they feel like he's not ready, or to be quite frank, if the roster can't protect him and keep him healthy. We've seen rookie quarterbacks go in there and get absolutely massacred behind Swiss cheese O lines. I don't think the Raiders are going to be too keen on doing that, which is why my rookie of the year pick is going to be Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame. And is he was he as big of a story as Fernando Mendoza? No. Like Indiana last year dominated college football from a narrative perspective and in a game perspective. They were phenomenal. But what I see in Jeremiah Love is an extremely talented running back in a situation that is going to be very good for his numbers. Are the Cardinals going to be good next year? No. Some people have told me they're going to go 17-0 and win the Super Bowl. I don't quite believe them. I'm not quite sure about that. But the Cardinals are going to be in a position where they need a strong running game to set up their offense. When you look at their quarterback room, whether they go with Carson Beck or Jacoby Brissett, neither of those guys are engines that can really drive the offense by themselves. If you have Brissett or Beck out there, I think it would be in your best interest to build the pass game off of the run game. Try to establish your running game to open up the play action, make things a little bit easier for the brisket man or Carson Beck. And when you have a rookie running back, fresh legs, explosive speed, I think they're going to lean on Love to sort of power their offense and, keep the chains moving. And you put a talented running back in a situation like that, I can, there's a reality where he's putting up some pretty crazy numbers. Might not be a bad pickup for fantasy, um, as there's not a ton of offensive talent on that roster outside of the often inconsistent Marvin Harrison Jr.
I like what you said, and I like your choice. There is one thing you said though. You said that the Raiders might not try and rush Mendoza. You said that they might be smart and protect him if he's not ready.
Oh boy, I can see where this is going.
When have you, when have I, when has anyone as of recent associated the word smart with the Raiders?
Touche. You have a point. The Raiders are not known for being a smart franchise. They do have Tom Brady on there in some capacity, so I'm hoping maybe or thinking maybe he can sort of fix the broken culture in there. But yeah, the Raiders in good decision making in general from a front office or personnel perspective is not. They just don't go together. It's
Nope.
like oil and water; they don't mix. So yeah, fair. Honestly, I'm excited to see how it works out. Up next, one that I haven't heard talked about as much: defensive rookie of the year. Who
So
you got?
personally, my pick, looking at what happened last year, the Giants were maybe the greatest 4-win team in football ever. I watched a lot of Giants football last year, due in large part to my roommates all being Giants fans. Which I'm
Disgusting.
sorry, guys, that really sucks. I'm sorry for your loss. I don't know what parent decided to have you born in Giants territory. That sounds horribly irresponsible of them. But with all that being said, the Giants were like the greatest, most fun, most competitive 4-win team of all time. They were giving it to some talented teams, and of course, they didn't end up winning a lot of those games. But that roster's improved on both sides of the ball quite a bit. So with that being said, I'm taking Arvell Reese. Got drafted, I believe, fifth out of Ohio State, monster of a football school. Um, they have new staff and much improved D line on that defense. So I think he'll look incredibly exciting. Um, yeah,
I think that's probably the favorite pick. If I was picking one person and I was a betting man, which I'm not, I would probably go with Reese. I want to give a shout out to David Bailey. I think he's playing on the Jets, which that's rough. Um, Coming out of Texas Tech on a roster that isn't loaded with talent per se, and a team that is probably going to be playing a lot more defense than offense, given that they're starting Geno Smith at quarterback. I think he could be a big impact player for them on defense in his rookie season. So not saying he's like my pick, but just a name to keep an eye on as potentially being in the mix.
I like it. Up next, I believe we have Coach of the Year. Very interesting, especially with how many coaching changes there were. What do you got?
So we talked about it a little bit earlier, but when it comes to these like end of season awards, whether it's MVP, Coach of the Year, whatever, the NFL loves a good story. They love the narrative. The narrative is very important to whether you win or not. And two potential narratives that I can see is first off, the NFL likes it when the Chicago Bears are good. They're an old school team, been around since literally the beginning of the NFL. And if Ben Johnson can lead them to another successful season, Caleb Williams can continue his sort of breakout to being one of the league's elite quarterbacks. I can see a world where Ben Johnson walks away with it. But more realistically, John Harbaugh is taking over a reloaded Giants team. We know he's a good coach. Just because things weren't working out in Baltimore doesn't mean he's a bad coach. Sometimes front offices just look, they say, you know what, it's time for a change. Harbaugh is still an elite coach in this league, and if he can pull that Giants team together, get Jackson Dart to take another step forward in his career, obviously a very talented defensive mind. When you look at all those elite Ravens teams from the 2010s, I think he's in a position where a good season, um, a big improvement from the 4 wins of last year, could see John Harbaugh walking away with the Coach of the Year award.
I like that take a lot. I am going in a different direction. We talked about it a lot, but if there's one thing we know is that the NFL does love their storylines. And the Baltimore Ravens have long underperformed considering how talented their roster has been. I mean, you look at Lamar Jackson, you look at Derrick Henry, you look at Zay Flowers, you look at Mark Andrews, you look at Raquan Smith, you look at Kyle Hamilton, excuse me, and you see a very stacked roster, and they really haven't been getting it done as of late. And who you blame for that is very up in the air. You could blame coaching. You could blame injuries, which has been a very large part of what's been going on with them. You could blame Lamar Jackson if you're crazy. But so with that being said, I'm going with Jesse Minter. It's a fresh start for the Ravens. If you see them look really good and really exciting, operating at a high clip this year, I think that could be up for contention. It is really hard though, because Coach of the Year is probably the hardest one to pick out going into a season. Like you really don't know what storylines are going to take place. Like if a team gets injured and still performs, then a coach is going to look great for that. So who knows?
It's an interesting take, and to be quite honest, I've been a Baltimore Ravens hater since I was old enough to understand what a football was. So I will be actively rooting for their downfall. Um, so in that way, I guess I hope your pick is wrong. Not to be a hater, but I'm gonna be a hater for a second. And yeah, to make a way too early prediction for February, who's your Super Bowl champion?
Well, I've talked about it a little bit, and I know we talked about who we think is going to be in the Super Bowl last week. So for those of you that didn't catch that episode, shame on you. But I said it's going to be Rams Ravens, and call me a lunatic, call me insane. I think I got the Ravens finally getting it done. It's about
Um,
time, to be honest. When you look at their roster, when you look at how Lamar Jackson has produced, when you look at Derrick Henry, who's been one of the greatest running backs in the league, absolute phenom. I think it's about time. I'm hoping. Well, I guess I'm not hoping. I'm not a huge Ravens guy, even though it does kind of sound like it. Maybe the coaching switch is finally the straw that breaks the camel's back. Who's really to say? My only other prediction is that it's not the Bills. Sorry, Bills fans. No, I'm not.
Have you been talking to It's Lamar Season? Notorious Ravens super fan It's Lamar Season?
Well, interesting thing, if you watch the sports perspective, you would know that I did. Very interesting. I also talked to this guy on that show. His name was Brandon LeBlanc. I don't know if you know him.
Never heard of him. Sounds like a scrub.
Yeah, neither did I, to be honest. I had to look him up. Anyways, what do you
Yeah,
got, Brandon?
you know, again, they're gonna say, "Oh my God, he's such a homer." That's
Oh
right.
God.
That's right. I am. Uh, the New England Patriots have a reloaded offense, a stout defense, an elite coach, a great offensive coordinator, and Efton Chisholm III. And if you haven't heard, Efton Chisholm III has a new touchdown celebration that is going to change the league. And not only is Efton Chisholm going to change the league, the Patriots are going to win it. I'm calling it Patriots Super Bowl 61 champions. Make it happen. It would be awesome. I think they have the roster to do it. They have the coaching staff to do it. All the pieces are there. Super Bowls aren't just about the personnel and the coaching staff. They're also about getting a couple of lucky breaks. If you look at most Super Bowl winners, it's because they were either less injured or they got a good play here or they snuck by a team here. A lot needs to go right to win the Super Bowl. But for a way too early prediction, I have no issue. I have no qualms about saying the New England Patriots can go all the way.
And, one thing that you forgot to neglect, I wonder if you're just trying to keep it on the down low. I don't know if a lot of people know this. I don't know if the audience has really heard this before, but you do love Drake May.
The rumors are true. I do love Drake May.
Kind of,
I may have a T-shirt that says exactly that
kind
that I
of,
wore to media day last year.
kind of low key. I don't know if anybody really knew that. I don't know if you were like comfortable talking about that, but
Uh,
it had to be out in the open sooner or later. Brandon does love Drake May, but
you dang right.
I believe that is our last prediction for the NFL season. Following
Oh boy.
that, we
Oh,
have
I know it's next.
what what maybe a few would consider a very big UFC card coming up. Um, what do you think, Brandon?
All right, it's time for that part of the episode where I talk about the UFC and mostly complain about it. UFC 330 is going down this Saturday. The main event, Ian Machado Gary, number two ranked welterweight, is taking on the champion Islam Makhachev for the welterweight belt. Additionally, on this card, you have Jillian Robertson challenging the women's strawweight champion Mackenzie Dern. You've got a little Unk versus prospect battle between Charles Johnson and Jose Ochoa. You've got a middleweight bout that is really mostly just mid between Mansur Abdul Malik and Dustin Stoltzfus. And you've got low key a lightweight banger with Edson Barboza and Esteban Rabovicis. So we'll start at the bottom. Barboza versus Rabovicis. I love that fight. It's not big for rankings or title implications, but if you've watched either of these guys fight, Edson Barboza has some of the best kicks in the game. Um, if anyone hasn't seen Edson Barboza fight before, just look up Edson Barboza spinning back kick KO, and you'll think it's probably AI, because of how fast and just perfect it is. Esteban Radovic is probably most famous for the absolute scrap he had with Daniel Zaluber at Noche UFC a couple years ago. He's a dog. He can throw. He lost his last fight to Mateus Gamrot because Gamrot likes to wrestle. Edson Barboza does not wrestle. He doesn't. He just doesn't. He would much rather stand at range and throw kicks at you, which for Rabovic is much more his speed. No idea who's going to win it. Barboza is fighting washed allegations at the moment, and Rabovic did kind of get wrestled to high heaven in his last fight, but should be fireworks either way.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because like it seems to me like the theme of almost the entire card is fighters looking to bounce back. You have a lot of guys
Yeah,
coming off losses, which I don't know if piling a whole card with fights like that is necessarily the best decision, but regardless, it's
it's
the
not.
decision they made. You brought up the Gamrot loss. One other interesting thing to note, I don't know how much it could change the fight. Barboza has hinted at this being his last dance. Now, it's just speculative, I don't know if it's win or lose, he's done. But I imagine he's going to be fighting extra hard, knowing that, maybe that's the last time he steps in the octagon.
It's tough because sometimes you see them in the last fight, they go all out, and then sometimes when they know it's their last one, that means their heart already isn't in it. I hope we get vintage Barboza. Um, moving on, Mansour Abdul Malik versus Dustin Stoltzfus. Both of these guys are trying to bounce back from losses.
Yep.
It's a weird, definitely a weird situation to make that a main card fight. Um, but still should be a good one. Should be a good fight. I just like you said, is it a good decision to stack a card with people coming off of losses? I don't know. And for this fight, I don't really have a prediction. I would say Abdul Malik would be a slight favorite in my eyes just because he is more of a prospect. Stoltzfus has been in the UFC for a while, 16-8 overall MMA record. Not much to say about that fight. Doesn't really thrill me, especially when you look at the quality of some other UFC cards you get. You look at like the first or second fight on the main card. It's like two guys who realistically could be fighting, for a title shot, and then you have this. But moving on, we have a crafty vet versus prospect fight with Charles Johnson and Jose Ochoa. Ochoa is, I think, 10 years younger than Charles Johnson. Um, if you haven't heard of Charles Johnson, first of all, you got to look him up because his haircut is ridiculous. It's like the stupidest looking thing. It's like a mullet, but only the back, only on the back of his head. The rest of him is bald. Um, and Charles Johnson, despite being rather chinny, has a tendency to get knocked out. He's also kind of a prospect slayer. I think his most notable win is a knockout win over the current champion in the division, Joshua Van. Which shout out Joshua Van, that's the goat right there. I love watching him fight. But Charles Johnson has a reputation as kind of like a prospect killer. Every so often he goes out there and beats someone he shouldn't beat. Jose Ochoa is probably someone he shouldn't beat. Like the younger guy in a sport where, you know, people don't stick around that long. It's a young man's game, mixed martial arts. Will definitely be an interesting fight. For anyone that doesn't watch the UFC, if I can recommend you watch one fight on this card, it would be the flyweights. The flyweights show up to scrap every single time. I don't know how it's true, yet it somehow is. Ridiculously fast and technical. Um, Definitely a must watch for me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. A lot going into this fight because Charles Johnson has like most definitely been spiraling. He's been getting up there in age, and that's resulted in a lot of losses for him. And his solution has just been to fight more. I believe he's already fought a few times this year, which is pretty unheard of. Most fighters by the end of the year, I think 2 to 3 fights is pretty impressive. I could be wrong, but I believe this is his third fight already, and we're only in August, which is kind of insane. So he could probably use a win, but even that, like, if he wants to keep fighting with how much of a workhorse he's been, with how much like a stable presence, they're gonna let him keep fighting.
Absolutely. And they know he comes to fight every time. There's no circling for 15 minutes. There's no lay and pray. Charles Johnson is either chinned or be chinned. It's it's tough if you're a Charles Johnson fan, but if you're just looking for a good fight, definitely got to watch. Moving right along, strawweight title in the women's division between Mackenzie Dern and Jillian Robinson. Robertson, 5 fight winning streak after being sort of an up and down fighter throughout her career. Mackenzie Dern recently captured the title. Um, this is a weird fight for me to talk about because there's sort of an elephant in the room, and that is the fact that neither of these women are the best fighter in the strawweight division. Um, Obviously, Zhang Weili moved up to fight Valentina Shevchenko. Um, didn't win that fight. I don't think she's fought since. I think if Zhang Weili fought either Robertson or Dern, she would win and get her belt back. But Dern did win the title fair and square. Got to show respect. Beat Virna Jandiroba to get the belt. 3 fight winning streak for her. Um, I would say, I would say Mackenzie Dern's the favorite. Robertson is pretty crafty on the ground. Last time I checked, has a pretty slick submission game with the jiu-jitsu. But I think Dern's the better overall fighter. I believe the younger fighter too. Um, which younger fighters in championship bouts tend to take the win. Um, Official prediction will be Mackenzie Dern by unanimous decision.
Vegas agrees with you, if that helps at all.
A little.
After that, I believe we have the main event.
Oh boy.
Um, Much talked about. We have Islam Makhachev versus Ian Machado Gary for the welterweight title. Now, before I get into this, let me ask you, Brandon, what do you think's going to happen?
So if you watched Islam Makhachev's last fight and you said you watched it all the way to the end, I would know you were lying because he laid on top of Jack Della Maddalena for 24 out of 25 minutes and nothing happened. It was the most boring thing I had ever seen. I would rather watch paint dry. That being said, I would be an absolute lunatic if I said that Makhachev wasn't the best fighter in the promotion right now. He hasn't lost since 2015. He has beaten a laundry list of absolute legends of the sport: Charles Oliveira, Alexander Volkanovski, um, took down Maddalena to get his second belt. Um, he is a ridiculously talented fighter, someone with an unparalleled work ethic, excellent cardio, suffocating grappling. I mean, when he takes you down, it is pretty much impossible to get back up unless you're prime Alexander Volkanovski or Unk Dustin Poirier. Um, and then you have Ian Gary. Ian Gary gets called out for being a decision machine. He doesn't get the finish in most of his fights. His last win was a decision victory over Bilal Muhammad. And after that fight, he said, Bilal couldn't take me down. Islam, I dare you to take me down. Why would you say that, Ian? He is going to take you down. Your takedown defense is not good enough. You were getting taken down and kind of beat up by Shavkat and by Carlos Prates in the fifth round. Islam Makhachev's going to win. I feel like it's crazy to say otherwise. He has underrated striking, in my opinion. Everyone who thinks, oh, I have the advantage here, they get surprised when he like low key pieces them up and has a really nice kicking game. You're not better than him on the ground because right now there's no one in the UFC that is better than him on the ground. And his camp is full of straight up killers. I mean, his coach is Habib Nurmagomedov. He's got Umar Nurmagomedov and Usman Nurmagomedov in his training camp, two of the best fighters on the planet right now. Ian Gary is a cornball. He's a cornball. There's no other way to say it. If you disagree with me, I would challenge you to watch 5 minutes of him talking about anything in any setting and walk away with that and say, this guy's like kind of normal. He's like, he's a cool dude. He's not. And while he is a talented striker, he's a very high IQ, methodical sort of athlete who definitely knows how to weaponize his opponent's weaknesses and keep the fight where he wants to keep it and, exploit holes in people's games. Islam Makhachev doesn't have a whole lot of holes for him to exploit. If he tries to make it a striking fight and he doesn't focus enough on the takedown defense, Islam's going to dominate him. And if he somehow manages to keep it striking, I feel like Islam could kind of piece him up there too. He was getting pieced up by Michael Venom Page so bad he had to wrestle him. If he gets pieced up by Makhachev on the feet and tries to wrestle him, he's going to find himself in a Darce choke in like a half second. I want Islam Makhachev to win. I don't want Ian Gary to win. This is the most cut and dry thing I've ever seen in my life. I can't do it anymore. I can't talk about it. My brain's going to explode.
That's funny because you said it was crazy to say that Ian Machado Gary is going to win this. Well,
Don't do it.
call me a lunatic. Call
You're a
me
lunatic,
a
Pat.
lunatic.
You're insane.
Because I think it helps that I really like the way Ian Machado Gary fights. Now, we could talk a lot about Ian Machado Gary outside of the octagon. He is a lot of things,
Good.
and none of them are like very great things to be called. He tries really hard to promote himself, but it doesn't come off very well. A lot of
No, it
people
doesn't.
like, I feel like he tries too hard to be Connor. A lot of people have said that before. Not a good
So
person to
many have
try and
tried.
be, by the way. Let's get that straight. Outside of that though, he's also like super performative. Like there are some really weird things that he's said. If you want to like look into that, you can go do it yourself.
Yeah.
But outside of that, he's got incredible footwork. His distance is great, and he's probably one of the best counter strikers in the UFC, which I really
Unfortunately, this
like a
is
lot.
true.
Coming from a fencing background, which is not at all the same, but you know, a lot of the bones are pretty similar. So seeing something like that for me is really fun. He's been getting called the future for I don't know how many years now. The future's got to become the present at some point or another. So I'm a throw one out there, and I'm saying Machado Gary's going to win this.
Well, he does have a couple things going for him. Like you said, talented counter striker. He's also going to be by far the largest opponent that Makhachev has faced from a physical perspective. I believe he will have a 4-inch reach advantage and a 5-inch height advantage on Makhachev, which will work to his advantage when he's trying to keep the fight at range. I'm going to tune in as much as I just hated on this card in general and on the title fight. I'm gonna watch it. I kind of need to know what happens. Big implications for the welterweight division. Obviously, if you've been paying any attention to the UFC right now, welterweight is the most loaded it's been in years. It's probably the most loaded division in the sport, outside of the two guys fighting for the title. Michael Morales weighing in as the backup fighter. He's an absolute tank who hits like a truck. Carlos Prates is eyeing a title shot after a vicious, vicious knockout over Leon Edwards. Um, a lot of these guys at the top of welterweight are going to be watching this fight to figure out who they're going to fight next. And I really hope it's not Ian Gary. Oh, jeez, man. All right, you know what? We're going to move on to something that's more fun to talk about. A good story, perhaps. We're going to talk about a sport that doesn't get covered a lot on the play-by-play, which is ironic because I have dedicated almost an entire decade of my life to it. We're going to talk about long distance running. How do you feel about that, Patrick?
Now, being someone who knows a lot about long distance running, more than you, I would say. If I had to, go out on a limb and guess which one of us knows more about long distance running, has been more involved
You
in
see,
the
that
culture, what do you point at?
I'm putting up my St. Anselm cross country jersey and my
St.
race
Anselm, St.
bibs
Schmanselm.
from
I
the
run on
Any
the
10
treadmill
and
every once in a while. So I'd say I know more than
oh,
you, if I had to guess.
okay. I'll
But
give it to you there.
the story is Jacob Ingebrigtsen comes back after having surgery on his Achilles, which insane to have to do for a runner. He comes back after I believe 11 months, almost a year, and he wins his fourth straight 5,000-meter European Championship. Fourth straight after the surgery. So he won, had surgery, and comes back and just wins another one. It's unbelievable. I don't know if you want to talk about the more technical side, Brandon. I don't know if you can, considering your limited running knowledge. But if you have anything
Ah,
to say, I'd be curious to hear it.
so yeah, you know what? I may not know a lot about distance running, but watching the race, it was impressive the level of grit that Ingebrigtsen showed. Started out near the back, had to work his way through the pack, faced some adversity, had to fend off Jimmy Gressier. But at the end of the race, it was very apparent that he is still Jakob Ingebrigtsen. He is still one of the most talented middle distance, long distance runners the sport has ever seen. And considering he's only had about 6 to 8 weeks of like actual legitimate training uh, post surgery, the fact that he could show up to a European championship and still perform at an elite level is utterly insane to me. I mean, Achilles injuries in general, not even surgery, Achilles injuries are brutal to deal with as a runner. To be able to rehab from that and have the confidence in yourself and in your body to run a 13:15 and win a championship level race is ridiculous. And it makes me excited for what's to come because in Ingebrigtsen's absence, one of his biggest rivals, Josh Kerr, the another mid distance runner, I believe from Scotland, has taken the world by storm. Most recently, broke the world record in the mile that had stood for, I believe, around 2 decades. Those guys have had a lot of really good races in the 1500. And when you look at the 1500 right now, when you look at guys like Cole Hawker, Yared Naguse, Josh Kerr, Cameron Myers, and now a healthy Ingebrigtsen, who clearly is still one of the best of the best. I can't wait to see these guys race because as talented as Ingebrigtsen is, on any given day, Kerr, Hawker, Naguse, I think even Cameron Myers can all compete for that top spot in a championship race. And as someone who wants to see the sport of track and field get more notoriety, I think a good storyline like this, Ingebrigtsen's return to the sport, could get a little bit more eyes on mid distance and long distance running.
Yeah, I'm really shocked you had all that in you, Brandon. It's going to be interesting to look at going forward. We'll definitely have to take some time. Brandon has to get his knowledge up a little more because I'm sure
Yeah,
that was all you had, right? That was
that
pretty much
was
all you
all.
had in you.
Look, most of my information comes from the my former teammates who actually know ball about running, and they would all tell me crazy stuff last year, like Brandon, you have to invest in your recovery, you have to actually stretch and do like ice baths, and I was like, nah, I'll just like shake it off before I run. But yeah, yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting to watch a race like that. It's exciting to see a story like that get a little bit of traction, and I mean, distance running's better when Jakob Ingebrigtsen is at the top. Uh, excited, very excited.
Not a thing often said about distance running, but here we are.
Man, you're trying to tick me off. You're not. You're not see
No,
the jump.
no.
You're not see that. I'm getting that. I'm gonna
Okay,
Hulk out, Patrick. You think McCaffrey's the next Hulk? It's me, bro. It's me. I'm the next Hulk.
is there a substation next to your house?
No, but like they got that 5G tower somewhere though.
Oh yeah, that'll do it. Anyways,
Yeah,
moving on, which we'll definitely have to cover more running once you up your knowledge a little bit.
yeah.
But I think that was a big hallmark of especially the first run of the show, talking about these sports that don't get covered as much. We talked about a lot of tennis, we talked about some golf. So it'll be interesting to, slowly cycle that back in as the show continues to go. Every Wednesday, by the way, for those of you that have still missed it. We've been going strong, so make sure to stay tuned. But following that, we have a few viewer questions. Interesting this week, to say the
Do I
least,
want to
I
hear
guess.
them? Do I want to hear them this time?
I think you'll probably be happy. Your husband didn't call in this time. He must be mad at you or something.
Oh, we
Um,
gotta leave that in last week, man.
from Ethan S. and Medway. Do y'all mess with licorice?
Are you kidding me? This is the
My
best
thoughts
we could do.
exactly.
This is the best we could do. Well, like the answer is like as weird of a question as this is to receive on a podcast that is, 95% sports, 4% X-Men, and 1% tomfoolery. This would definitely fall in the tomfoolery aspect. The
Yeah.
answer is yes. A brother loves some Twizzlers. A brother will occasionally eat some black licorice. Like it's not bad. It's not something I would
No,
consume in a high
no,
quantity.
no.
It's not something I would consume in a high quantity, but a little piece every once in a while, it's like hear me out. It's not bad. It can be enjoyed in small quantities.
I'm gonna stop you right there.
Okay.
Because, well, I respect the Twizzlers take. Twizzlers definitely have a place in the game. Savvy little veteran. Black licorice has no place in the sport. What does it
The old
do?
heads aren't gonna like that.
What does black licorice do? Look, okay, maybe the old
Taste
heads
kind of
won't like it.
interesting.
Let me tell you this. Black licorice was playing against plumbers and firemen. These bum candies had part-time jobs when black licorice was in its prime. And you're telling me black licorice can play against the likes of the Snickers bar, the
Mm,
M&M, the
that's
Reese's
fair.
peanut butter cup.
Oh goodness.
No.
Well, you do make a point there because I feel like in black licorice's heyday, there's like a good chance that it was black licorice, and the other option was like hardtack. Um, which, to be fair, if most foods went up against hardtack, they would dominate. They would put up prime wilt numbers. The game has changed. Candy has come a long way. Like you said, Snickers, Reese's, M&Ms. I want to give a shout out to Reese's Pieces, a Milky Way bar. Like there's just so many innovations in the candy game. And as much as I think like occasionally looking back at some black licorice tape and trying it out a little bit, it's like all right, but you have to acknowledge that the game has changed. Eras shift. The meta has sort of I mean, when you're talking about a Snickers bar that's got caramel and peanuts and chocolate going up against black licorice, I think it's a mismatch. It's very clearly a mismatch, and it pains me to say that. And I'm sure the old heads are going to say, "You don't know how tough black licorice was back in the day." That's right, I don't. But I do know how good a Reese's peanut butter cup tastes. Um, and that's hard to beat.
Yeah, some people will consider my opinions on the athletes in the candy game very questionable. I have been on record calling the Butterfinger my goat. But
That is wild.
say all you want, say all you want. No one has as much heart as Butterfinger. No one plays as hard as Butterfinger does. But with that being said, if you lived in like the Great Depression and you have some nostalgia for black licorice, that's fine. But calling black licorice great or even competitive with all the titans of the candy game today is ridiculous. I'm getting worked up just thinking about it. So, with that being said, Ethan, to answer your question, no, absolutely not. The only thing I envision after you ask me that question is like a 75 to 80-year-old man that hasn't had candy since the 1960s. But moving on from that, from Isaiah in Boston, how
Oh
many
my
touchdowns
goodness.
will May and Brown combine for this year? And now, just to clarify for you, in case you didn't know, this is referring to Drake May, not Ann Michael May. And this is referring to AJ Brown, not Jalen Brown.
Okay, Patrick, we got too soon. I
I
mean, I
just
don't
I just
want
needed to make sure you knew. I needed to
to.
make sure.
You see this jersey, Patrick?
You're
I haven't healed. I haven't healed yet. You can't just say his name like that. You can't just bring it up.
you're a little out of date there, pal.
Okay. Anyway, back to the question. Um, Drake May last year threw, I believe, 31 touchdowns. A good number. I think he's capable of more. AJ Brown last year had 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. A good year. Again, I think he's capable of more. Josh McDaniels has been known to rejuvenate wide receivers' careers in the first year in his system. If you want evidence, look at Wes Welker. Look at Randy Moss. Look at Stephon Diggs coming off of the ACL injury, 1,000 yards. I think I think you could see anywhere in like the 12 to 15 touchdown range for the May to Brown connection. I think it's definitely going to be an increase over what AJ Brown had last year. And just when you look at AJ Brown as a player, 6'3", 225, he's not just a slot receiver. He's not just, getting chunk plays. He is a legitimate deep threat who is also a legitimate red zone option. He can go up there and high point the ball in the back of the end zone. I think he's going to be a very reliable target for Drake May in all facets of the game. So I'm going to say around 12 to 15.
Yeah, I think that's good. 15 might be a little high. That would be one of the most like exceptional wide receiver quarterback duo seasons in the history of the sport. And I don't quite know if we'll see that out of a first year duo. I'm looking more at like the 11 to 13 range personally, I think, which for a first year
Okay.
duo that's just putting it together would still be pretty exceptional. That's a good little spot, especially if you see good production out of the other receivers on the Patriots who are looking a lot deeper than in years past. But that's my prediction for them right there. I'm a little lower than you are. Following
That's all
that,
right.
we have one more question from Kendall in Milwaukee. What do you think about Andrei Smayev? Now, for those that don't know, you probably can't tell based on the podcast because either you're listening on Spotify or you're watching on YouTube and you only see us from like the chest up. So you can't really get a good idea of this, but Brandon and I are super into bodybuilding. Now, obviously, you wouldn't be able to tell. And, I'm not standing up for reference, but, very knowledgeable about bodybuilding, super into bodybuilding. And Andrei Smaev, what is there to say besides the fact that the dude is huge? Um, I hadn't heard too much about him before being asked this question, so I had to do some research. But, we talked about Christian McCaffrey, we talked about Brandon LeBlanc, but you want to talk about the next real Hulk? This dude is called the Russian Hulk for a reason. He's absolutely massive.
Okay, first of all, I'm gonna try really hard not to bring up the fact that you just said absolutely massive. Um, if you know, you know. That being said, Andrei Smaev is a beast. He's an absolute beast. He makes you question, what are the upper limit of possibilities for the human body? Because the dude's muscles have muscles. Looks like his diet is straight up just protein and gains. Um, I imagine this dude would eat 225 reps for breakfast, and then probably shrug it off and say it was a warm up. Um, just an absolute tank. Uh, I feel like if he was around in the 1970s, 1980s, and they were making a TV show about the Hulk, and the CGI budget was non-existent because it wasn't that good back then. I can see a very real world where this guy would put on some green paint and run around and be the Hulk. So yeah, that's all I got to say. Damn.
Yeah, it is crazy. I think the bodybuilding industry, the bodybuilding as a sport, has gone through a pretty decent amount of change recently. I mean, obviously you have like the golden era um of guys getting on stage where it's pretty big. I know you had Triple H do a couple hosting jobs for the sport, which was very interesting. But it's definitely changed a lot and it's become much more of like a social media thing. Obviously, you still have stage performances, but like the biggest part of it has been, like the social media presence of guys like Sam Sulek or Larry Wheels. So it's been interesting to see. It's kind of hard to talk about bodybuilding on a show with other sports just because of how like different it is. But so I guess my only question would be, who do you think benches more, Andrei Smaev on a bulk or you on a cut?
I'm pretty sure Andrei Smaev could bench like five of me. Um, I mean, obviously I'm pretty jacked. I've been known for my cut physique. Um, that being said, Andrei Smaev could probably kick me into the horizon so hard that I disappeared into the sky with a twinkle like Super Mario when he shot out of a cannon. Um, I don't want to say anything negative about Andrei Smaev because, to be quite frank, I'm a little scared about what that guy could do. And I don't want to generate any bad blood between a guy whose nickname is the Russian Hulk. So I'm going to make the tactical smart play here and say Andrei Smaev could probably outbench me if he was on his best day.
It's a very political answer, but that's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And on that note, that is the last question we had for today.
Wow. What a
If you're
stunner.
interested in submitting a question for us to answer next Wednesday, moving forward in the future, make sure to check out the question submission form, which is on our link tree, and you'll find our link tree in the bio of our YouTube, on our Spotify. It'll be attached to the video if you're watching it on YouTube. You'll see it on our Instagram. It's everywhere. So, with that being said, do you have anything else, Brandon?
Uh, nah, that's it for me. We actually covered so much in this episode. Absolutely thrilled that we're back to recording once a week. Glad that we get to talk about distance running. And you know what? I love Drake May. I love Drake May. That's how I'm gonna end it. I love Drake May. What a guy.
Great way to end it. With that being said, make sure to tune in next week, and thank you for watching this episode of the Play by Play.
Thank you for watching the play-by-play with Patrick and Brandon. Make sure to check our Instagram to stay up to date with the show, and make sure to come back next Wednesday for a new episode.